Joe and Ben from Portland International Raceway. It stopped raining. ARCA, they called the race short because of the heavy rain, but it has stopped raining. Maybe a little bit of a time constraint because we know there's a TV window, and then of course it is getting darker here. There's no lights at Portland, and there is expected heavy rain. Do you believe that was the right call to call the race short?
At the time, yes. I mean, it looks kind of silly now because it's not raining at the moment. Maybe they shouldn't have shortened it quite as much as they did, but the conditions out there were getting pretty tough. I mean, we knew it was going to be difficult with the forecast and everything, but it was certainly getting to be tough out there for the ARCA teams.
It was getting tough out there, and of course the ARCA, that was a prelim race, even though it was after the main event race, which was the NASCAR Xfinity series. That Pacific Automation 147, that was something else of a race. It started off, it looked like it was going to be a Ty Gibbs runaway, but then a bizarre incident in which this probably changed the race. During the caution flag, Jesse Iwuji gets into the leader while they're behind the pace car. He was 3 laps down. There was no explanation as to what happened. Your thoughts on what occurred? And did this essentially ruin Ty Gibbs' race? Because yes, we know he crashed, spun out, was able to come back, but do you think there was some damage to that car?
Well, actually, I think there is an explanation. I think Jesse was being told that he could unlap himself or something like that, or not sure exactly what the situation was with the communications with his team. I'm just going off of my memory from one of the tweets I saw, but I don't know if he went sooner than he should have or if Ty just didn't see him or what the situation was, but he ended up clipping Ty Gibbs, spinning him out. I'm curious as to why Ty was allowed to rejoin. I mean, obviously it wasn't his fault, but you think of what happened to Marcus Ambrose at Sonoma all those years ago. Usually when you lose track position, you don't maintain your speed under caution. They don't let you rejoin in your position you were in before the incident happened. So, it's certainly a little bit controversial what happened with Jesse there, and I think kind of was the spark for all the craziness that we saw. It was a surprisingly clean start given the wet weather conditions and everything, but I don't know. I mean, it seemed like for a while there we were just trying to get one green flag lap under our belts in stage 3, and we couldn't even do that. So I'm sure it was entertaining for a lot of the fans there, but I think there's going to be some questions as to, what the standard needs to be for NASCAR racing in the rain going forward. We went through this at COTA last year, of course, and now to have a bit of a messy race here, especially towards the end of Portland, it does raise some questions, and we don't do this all that often, so it's an opportunity for NASCAR to take a look at it and try to figure out how to make it better.
And one of the things, of course, with this race, there's no Cup Series, so it was very interesting. Between stage 2 and 3, we had all the teams, they came in and they started switching to the slick tires when we knew we had a damp track. This is where it seems to be a lot of crazy, but of course, if it was a normal condition, you could have, on your own, risked the dice, pit before the end of stage 2 completion, all sorts of moves. Do you think this sort of boxed everyone where it's like, okay, it's not raining, it's drying, let's go on slicks, because if it rains again, everybody has to go on wet tires no matter what. Do you think that just boxed everyone? Maybe something for NASCAR to consider when it comes to a standalone race weekend, to at least on the road course where we know we could have rain tires or slick tires, a change?
I mean, it's tough to say because, like I said, we only do this once or twice a year at most. So, talk about how rare it is for NASCAR to race on road courses, let alone get an opportunity when it rains. So it's, I don't know. I don't know that I have an answer for that at this point. I think we have to take a look at the data and see for ourselves. I know that obviously if there's a dry line, teams are going to want to go on slicks because if they stay on that dry line, it's going to be faster. But the problem is, especially if you do double file restarts, you get side by side. The moment you get off into the part of a track that's still wet, if you don't have the rain tires on, it's going to spell trouble, and I think that's what we saw in stage 3.
Yeah, and one of the big things, trouble, that would just seem to be the theme throughout. We saw a restart where Sheldon Creed got essentially the front end all damaged, but it all started with the 48, where essentially once the 2 came to an end on the backstretch, we all saw Sheldon came out, let Jade know he wasn't happy with him, even though we saw all race long, people were entering the festival corners and there was contact. Even the first start with Sam Mayer going around. We always know this is a tricky complex of corners, just for the IndyCar series. For NASCAR, do you think maybe something like what the ARCA series did, where that first lap, that start, they bypassed the festivals and then the next time around they started using it?
That's something else to look at as well. I was reminded of that famous commentator's clip where he said the guy who designed that first corner should be taken in a dark room and beaten. I don't know that we need to go that far here at Portland, but certainly turn one and the festival corner seem to be where most of the calamity happens on these restarts. So, I think in an ideal, perfect world, you would want to see the drivers adapt to the track, but with the conditions today, I think the ARCA Series probably made the right decision by bypassing that chicane on the starts and the restarts. So maybe that's something for the Xfinity Series to look at as well. I know it's not unprecedented. We do that at the Charlotte Roval. That's, of course, coming before the start-finish line even. But, I think NASCAR shouldn't be afraid to change things up a bit. And if you look at all the incidents and all the carnage that happened there, and especially in the weather conditions today, I don't know from your vantage point if you noticed this, but the broadcasters were saying it might actually be faster to cut the chicane and stop and then keep going again, as opposed to just trying to nurse it around the festival corners because of the conditions slowing you down so much. So there's definitely a lot to consider there as well.
Definitely was the case where when it was raining really hard, it did look like if you could be faster by coming into the festival cars, knowing you were going to stop right after the line and then get a launch out, because the other driver, especially you were really close, they're just starting to come to the exit and laying down that power out of the chicane on a curve makes it really challenging. So that was a really good point that you brought up, because that was something, as we said, the commentators, they mentioned it. The track started drying, and this is where we saw AJ Allmendinger coming towards the front, and he had an eventful race. In fact, in the start of the race, while we were in the festival corners getting video footage of everything going with Sam Mayer, it was much longer that we then see Noah Gragson, Matt Snyder. They had some confusion in the back, so they were a little bit delayed. And still, in the clip, you'll see no AJ Allmendinger. He goes a lap down early on. Looked like race was over. Of course, a caution, gets back on the lead lap. So one of the big things, what were your takes on AJ Allmendinger's race overall?
Yeah, I gotta say, I think some people thought AJ was done before the race even got started there. Just a crazy day for him, not even being able to really take the green because he went off course on the opening pace laps. He had to drop to the back as his crew made adjustments there. And just through all the chaos and calamity all throughout the day, he ended up working his way back up to the front and then taking the lead from Matt Snyder there at the very end. We always say he's always a threat when you come to the road courses, and particularly in weather like this. Very few drivers have real experience doing this more than just a couple of times. You think of the Charlotte Roval a couple years ago, and who won that race as well? It was AJ Allmendinger. So I guess shouldn't be surprised that he won the race today, but probably wasn't thinking that he was going to win the race on lap one. Certainly had to do a lot of work to get back up there.
And this is what AJ Allmendinger said in the press conference, plus 2 questions from Ben and I.
I don't know where to start. I crashed before we went green. The start was really strange because we had to go to the back just from qualifying yesterday, working on the car. So, they require all of us to, require us to let all the cars go and nobody would pass. Well, by the time they were going green, we were half a lap behind them. So I panicked and tried to catch them and went sailing off through turn 10 there, and I thought I destroyed the nose of the car. So I was in the pits before I ever took the green flag and went a lap down, and I think I went off 3 or 4 more times. So I never imagined all the mistakes I made to be able to get back up front like that. But that's what I love about this race team, is that Matt Collick, Chris Rice, and all the men and women, they're always here to pump me up. I'm super hard on myself, and especially these road course races, and I felt like I was just letting us completely down throughout the course of the race. So very frustrated myself, and once we got back up front there, I set it in my mind that with everything that I had done to cause us to lose this race, I was going to do everything I could to make sure we won it. And got a good restart there. Mike did a great job. It was a great battle. I knew if I could get in the lead, I could kind of dictate them, and just kind of prayed for no more yellows, because we weren't really good on the brakes, so restarts were kind of tough and things like that. So just quite unbelievable, honestly.
All right, we'll go ahead and open it up to questions. If you have a question, please raise your hand.
From GRIDnet, two-part question. You had the top 10 streak going for the longest time this season. That just snapped. A lot of people have been talking about, especially like junior motorsports, Ty Gibbs, leaving out Collick. Does this send a statement that Collick's still here, ready to race, and now that you got a win, you're contending for more wins? And then the second part with the 2-week break, how big of a momentum boost is it for everyone in the shop, knowing we got 2 weeks after our win for the next race?
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't think it makes a statement. You know, I think we know when we come to these road courses that you know, we're the car to beat. I wouldn't, you know, even Matt would tell you, it's no secret, we got a lot of work to do. We are not where we want to be. Junior Motorsports has really stepped up. They're doing a great job. Obviously, you know, Gibbs is always going to be quick. So, yeah, we got work to do. But that's what I love about it. We don't just sit at home and say, well, this is what we got. Matt puts so much effort, so much, you know, financial behind us that allow us to keep searching, to go find new things. Even if it doesn't work, you got to go try stuff. It's a big deal, you know, when we come to these races that you got to try to take advantage of it, and that's why I was so mad, because with yesterday, with what was happening, I can't thank ECR enough, our engine supplier, because we were having a motor problem that we had no idea what was wrong yesterday. They changed everything on the car, and it fixed it. And then with the mistakes I was making, I was like, man, I'm just giving points away when we should be trying to gain it back. Last week, I thought it was actually a good week. We made gains. We had a 4th and 6th place car. We didn't get that finished. You know, the top 10 streak, it was nice to talk about, but I never thought about it. I don't think any of us really did. We know where we need to be. This doesn't solve everything, but it's a win. Matt says trophy hunt, right? He's holding the trophy, so that's what matters.
Ben Schneider, GRIDnet. AJ, you mentioned you won here in GM Car 16 years ago. I'm curious, does the win mean more to you at this stage in your career than it did when you were just starting out in 2006?
No, I mean, that win was big because the week prior I didn't have a job. I was fired from my previous team. So I didn't even get hired till Wednesday night when Jerry Forsythe told me to show up to Portland the next day, and I met everybody, and next thing you know, we're in Victory Lane. I don't rank, you know, of course, winning at Indy last year, like that's pretty damn special. You know, you win at a place like Bristol. But I think you asked Matt, you asked Chris, and for sure myself, you don't rank wins. Like, they're hard to get. And I had plenty of time where I never sniffed the trophy for several years. So every win's important, especially in this day and age of where I'm at in my life, because you never know what the last one's going to be. Hopefully this isn't it, but yeah, I mean, every win's big.
So AJ Allmendinger, he gets a win. He now has a win. He's secure in the playoffs, and we have a 2-week break. He said they got a lot of work to do. Junior Motorsports, Noah Gragson, he was not happy with this race. He had a rough weekend. We saw Josh Berry, he didn't exactly have a smooth weekend. Allgaier, he had a couple offs. Is this something where just because of the uniqueness of this is the one standalone race, first time in a road course, Portland International Raceway, it's more easier to just say, hey, that was an off weekend, put it behind us, let's just focus on the big picture?
Well, it's got to be frustrating for Junior Motorsports because they got 2 weeks now to have to deal with this and think about it. But they're a very strong team, all 4 of their cars. I mean, we've been talking on the Encore show that there's a chance, you know, obviously Allmendinger's going to be very strong, as is Ty Gibbs, but wondering maybe Junior Motorsports could lock out the top 4 championship 4 spots when we get into Phoenix if they're running that strong. So I'm sure that a team like that will be able to put this weekend behind them and go on from there. I know Allmendinger had the win at Coda earlier, so he was already in the playoffs, but that still has to be, you know, trying to gain as many playoff points as you can. It's certainly a morale boost for them, and it's going to be a crazy night for him. He's traveling all the way to Gateway to compete in the Cup race, so that's going to be an interesting dynamic over there for sure.
Yeah, going all the way to Gateway for the Cup race. Of course, we're going to have coverage of the post-race activities on Grid Life Wrap-Up. I know one of the big things, Portland International Raceway, first time for the Xfinity Series. We saw all the action of qualifying, practice. Of course, the weather was a big headline, which interestingly enough, when CART used to run around the same time period, there was only like 3 or 4 race weekends where it was rainy. First time, do you think similar to Coda, we need a dry race weekend to really determine how is Portland International for the Xfinity Series?
I think so. I think there was some talk that maybe NASCAR should have picked a different date if they were going to come to Portland, because I know we're more in the rainy season there. I'll defer to you on that since you actually live out here. But I know, ARCA West got to run a dry race last year, and of course they're coming back here later this fall, so we might get to see a better race there and get a better feel for how stock cars will handle this track when they come back. But I think certainly this deserves more than just one race to judge it. I think anytime you go to a new track, you need a couple of races under your belt before you truly judge it and how it's going to race.
Yeah, one of the big things is just seems we know there's a lot of rain in the Oregon area. Predicting it is always a tricky part, but it's just something where for the longest time this weekend, Rose Festival has been pretty dry, but there are the years it does rain. This happened to be one of those years. And of course that meant for everyone, when it happens to rain, that just means they're just had a lot more harder race. We saw all sorts of drivers. Very few drivers had a clean race. I can't think of any driver really that had a clean race by the end, just because there was so much mayhem going on. I mean, we had Jade Buford contending for the lead, and his car looked all beat up. Allmendinger, his car was dirty, but he had 4 offs. When it comes to some of the rain races, I know you mentioned a little bit earlier about NASCAR looking at how we handle these rain races. Is this something where maybe we drop the double file restarts when it's a rain? We did that in COTA when it got really bad. Is that something where it's just, okay, it's raining, we're at a road course, single file, maybe something more differently? Your take on that?
Well, I'm thinking back to Bristol Dirt last year as well, and I think the track wasn't prepped as well as it could have been. They made that audible call there as well. So I'm not a fan of making those calls in the middle of a race, but I think that that's something that NASCAR could look at. Obviously double file restarts haven't been around forever, period. I wouldn't even be opposed to going back to how it was before 2009, where you had single file restarts and lap cars on the inside and then just single file straight away with 10 to go. I know the double file restarts are probably more exciting for the fans and create more action and more opportunities, but I think in conditions like this, you have to weigh the benefits of that versus the risks of just tearing up more race cars. And I think you saw, especially with the festival corners today, I think single file restarts maybe would have helped alleviate some of that.
Well, folks, Portland International Raceway, Pacific Office Automation 147 really delivered. A lot of fans have a lot to talk about. I think a lot of drivers are going to be talking about this race, especially for next year. If it comes to rain, will NASCAR do anything differently? If it's sunny, how it will work out. So it's going to be a lot of fun, and we thank everyone for tuning in all week long to the Grid Network, and then especially our weekend coverage from Portland International. Ben, I know, coming all the way out here to the West Coast, you're probably still running on East Coast time. Overall, your thoughts on how this entire weekend with NASCAR, ARCA, and everything with Portland International?
I think there's certainly some things to improve on, but I think given the conditions and it being the inaugural race, I'd say it was probably a success. It was great to see so many fans out here. It's the first time you've had a national touring series here in 22 years, and I think maybe even attendance that exceeded what IndyCar got last fall. So from that vantage point, certainly a successful race, but that second year is going to be the test for sure.
Second year is going to be the test, and of course, one of the big things, Portland International Raceway, a lot of volunteers making this possible, from the corner workers all around. So big congratulations to everyone volunteering, making this a great effort, a great weekend for so many. And we want to just say thank you all for tuning in to the Grid Network special coverage here at Portland International Raceway. Be sure to subscribe, like, and comment. And we'll definitely be seeing you on the air for Grid Life Wrap-Up. We got a lot more races. I know you're going to be heading out to Sonoma. We got IndyCar coming here to Portland. So a lot of coverage upcoming. So be sure to click that Patreon. Calling the show, Mark and Rob, they invest in us. You can invest in us. Help us stay on the air. For Ben Schneider, I'm Joe Samaniego. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time, and enjoy the races.